Oh, it's fantastic. It is wonderful. What is up, guys? It is the HUD. It is the first episode of the HUD. I'm trying and I'm doing my best to combine esports with radio talk. Now, of course, this is going to be a little bit of a slower start to the show. It's not going to be everything that everyone probably wants. It's not going to be fantastic, but it is it's going to be a fun experience to learn how it kind of goes along the way. Now, so we talk about the HUD. What it kind of means, of course, everyone knows heads-up display when it comes into Call of Duty. Very, very important part of what it really means to kind of be in the Call of Duty scene and what it kind of means to play in competitive. So, with that, obviously, we're having our recap show today for Stage 2. If you guys would like to bring up comments in the chat, talk about certain things, I would love to talk with you. It should be a fantastic time, and let's go and get started with everything. I want to obviously thank everyone who obviously showed up for the first episode. It's not going to be any video for me personally. We might integrate that a little bit later. Anything you guys want to talk about in the chat, we'll be talking about it. I have some topics that we can bring up to mention as well. And I'm going to do my best to remain as consistent as possible with stuff like this. Trying to make sure that I can have episodes coming out, not necessarily every day, but, obviously a lot of the time. So, of course, we do have a lineup today that we're going to be talking about. We have the Call of Duty World League Stage 2 Finals, talking about viewership, DT's run, and, of course, questions from the chat, which we're going to be answering throughout the entire show. So, with that in mind, it is only produced by myself, so if you guys have any comments or anything like that, you want to tweet at me to make sure I answer a question, make sure to tweet at the HUD TV. It is the special Twitter that we have going for it. So, with that in mind, obviously, we do talk about the Stage 2 Finals, which ended up taking place this weekend. A 4-day weekend, obviously, for this event, lasted 4 days. Had EU, ANZ, as well as the North American, crown to be decided on who would obviously take those events, who would take the entire title. And for the ANZ, it was obviously Mindfreak, who had not necessarily the easiest run in the world, but they definitely had one of the easiest grand finals to make it through. As far as Europe is considered, we obviously saw Millennium take that one. And from NA, we obviously recently just witnessed Envy, who ended up taking down Dream Team in a pretty interesting matchup. It wasn't exactly what everyone would want it to be, but it was still a fantastic matchup to watch, and I personally really enjoyed it. And, we were kind of talking about, for those who might have been able to watch, I think it was like day one recap show that I had on my stream. I was talking about how MVS, after they win, had a pretty big victory, I guess you could say. But after their victory, I was saying these guys can make it to the top. And personally, I was someone who had predicted them to make it to the grand finals to verse Opti Gaming. That isn't obviously the case. That completely surprised everyone. And if you were the person who predicted that, 'cause I think there was one person in there who pre-day one was predicting and tweeting at me saying, like, hey, don't count out the Luminosity guys. They can, without a doubt, take this game. So, major props to whoever that was. But still, it was obviously a fantastic event. Really, really enjoyed watching it. And we can obviously talk about a number of different things that happened throughout the weekend. Pull up a little bit of a graphic for you guys. It's not the smoothest transition, but it'll work. We're going to pull up the NA bracket, of course, what we witnessed throughout this entire weekend. We obviously had MV, who went up against H2K, was able to 4-0 them, made it all the way against Rise Nation. Rise Nation, after a pretty easy victory versus Cloud9, there was a lot of people predicting, maybe Cloud9 can have a standout performance. They were looking good in the 500 series, but just in general that they weren't really able to show up too much. And in my personal opinion, I think realistically it's a very difficult matchup for Cloud9. When you look at it, their strong suits not really being a hard point. They're more of a search and destroy, uplink CTF type of team. Well, Rise Nation just happens to be a squad who is consistent at every single game type. I believe they're positive in every single game type. I think that's the only team in all of the Call of Duty World League who has that title. Later on, we saw FaZe versus DT, an absolute thriller, which came down to a Game 7. DT narrowly walks away with that one, but that would not be the final Game 7 that they would have throughout the weekend. They would later face off against Luminosity, who also had a Game 7 versus Opti Gaming. Without a doubt, the most massive surprise throughout the entire tournament came in that particular matchup. Opti Gaming ends up walking away in the first round and going out talking about how they should have practiced a lot harder, showing that they didn't really have too much respect for the Call of Duty World League, with all the forfeits that ended up happening, so on and so forth. It was really kind of an unfortunate ending to their entire tournament run. We later would have DT go up against LG, which happened today. DT walked away with that one in Game 7 fashion yet again, where they would face off against Envious, who obviously won that game versus Rise Nation. Have to admit, though, I was really expecting, I'm not sure about anyone else, I was really personally expecting a lot better of a match when it came down to the Envy versus Rise match. I was really hoping to see better results from the Rise Nation guys. And that's a topic that we're going to be talking about today. And I also want to get your guys' thoughts, about about this entire tournament was really Rise Nation's performance. Because, granted, at times they looked great. They looked like to be the Rise of old. But in general, when it comes down to it, I'm not sure if this is just Envy's overall performance getting much better, or if it's Rise Nation just no longer being there, and that's something that we'll kind of talk about as the show does kind of continue on with itself. But I'm kind of looking at the chat. I see a couple people. Awesome to see you guys here. I see Techno Love. I see Dirk. Got Punisher, Dan. A lot of awesome people here. Thank you guys so much for obviously joining up and being part of the show here. But still, talking about the topics that we have in front of us today, talking about what this victory meant for a lot of these teams. Because, of course, Mind Freak ends up taking the second title of their run. Granted, that's kind of expected, and I think if anything besides first place would have absolutely been a massive surprise for the Mind Freak crew. You look at Millennium, which I think this is probably one of the biggest victories that they have ever had. You look at Swanee, you look at Tommy. Swanee had even mentioned before and saying, you know what, if I thought about in previous years of kind of maybe even trying to put competitive on the back burner, maybe even not trying to continue in his competitive journey, which to me is just absolutely absurd to think of Call of Duty without Swanee is just absurd. So with that victory, definitely a massive, massive win for those guys. Completely surprised me. See how well they did. Ended up facing off against Infuse, one of the first times we've seen that happen in all of Call of Duty, really. And they obviously ended up taking that one through. Envious, of course, wins versus DT. Pretty big victory for them as well. But you got to keep in mind, if you're not beating Optic Gaming, it's realistically... it is, like I said, it's a victory to me, obviously, but when it comes down to it, you're not facing off against Optic Gaming. You're not facing off the very, very best in the grand final, so people will treat it as less. It's just kind of like how it goes in the entire tournament, how it kind of goes, to be honest with you. So, we obviously talked about the bracket, we talked about everything, we talked about the surprise endings, and to be honest, I really and realistically think if we had map vetoes in this tournament, I don't think we would have seen nearly as many surprises, as we did. I think if we have map vetoes be introduced, if we have map vetoes start to be integrated back into the Call of Duty scene, I think that's only going to produce better results. I ended up tweeting out, I believe it was the Optic versus LG match, because that was the only match that Optic ended up having this weekend. And I believe a lot of the maps that they had, let me actually take a look at the tweet really quick, see if I can maybe try and pull it up. But essentially what it kind of came down to was that in all of the Optic versus LG maps, the map pool, essentially, there were a lot of bad maps that Optic ended up getting. Essentially, their two worst hardpoints they ended up playing. They played both Breach and Fringe. They played on their worst uplink, which is Breach, and they also played in the worst CTF, which is Stronghold. And I believe there was two maps that were LG's best maps, and I can't remember which game type it was. It might have been, I think it might have been uplink or something like that. But in general, though, you got to expect in every single map pool, you can almost guarantee that Optic would have gotten rid of at least one of those maps. I can guarantee you they would have got rid of Breach in both the uplink and the hardpoint if that opportunity kind of arose. So honestly, I would love to see map vetoes be introduced, and I think realistically, if we want Call of Duty to in some ways be respected more, randomness on how they generate the maps, I don't know, man. It's something that I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of the random map picks. I mean, who decides those things? Who decides those things? I mean, is it in some ways, is it a random person who decides that? Is it a computer-generated thing? Either way, though, it's random. It's random, and you don't want to have that involved with Call of Duty esports, or really in esports in general. And that's why I think when it comes down to esports, to have the opportunity to, in some ways, produce... or at least when it comes into esports, you have multiple different maps. Like, for example, if you're talking about League of Legends, you're talking about other esports, they play on it's the same environment. They're not playing on anything different, so it doesn't matter for them. Of course, they have champ select and stuff like that, which is very, very important. But for us, when it comes down to maps, I mean, every map plays something different. And we were talking in the Day 1 recap show that I was kind of talking about on my channel and stuff. I was mentioning, I think vetoes are good. I was kind of talking about certain things like this, and whatnot. But it's really important to mention, like I said, because each map is so different from one another. I mean, evac hardpoint to stronghold hardpoint, it's not just the rotations that are the same. It is a number of different things, whether it's overall specialists to have, streaks to use, certain, variables in that that you have to control, so on and so forth. There are so many important variables that come into each and every map that not every team is going to be good at them, which I think is really, really important, topic to kind of bring up. So, I'm obviously not giving Optic a pass. That's not giving Optic a pass. That's not saying, the only reason that they lost to Luminosity Gaming is because the maps were incorrect and the practice that Optic had, they didn't practice on those maps. No, I'm not giving Optic a pass whatsoever. And I'd appreciate if no one would tweet me that. No, I'm just kidding. But realistically, though, if map vetoes were introduced, I guarantee you we wouldn't have seen such a unfair advantage, I guess you could say, to Luminosity that they kind of had in some ways. And of course, a lot of the stats that actually were brought up in Stage 2, like what maps are good for this team, what maps are good for this team. This team traditionally isn't the best on this map. I mean, let's be honest here. A lot of the stats that we did end up having from the online league didn't necessarily transfer over. So with that in mind, you can give Optic a pass in some cases, but you really can't. They underperformed, and they've got to live with those mistakes, cut in, cut dry, just like that. So, like I said, map vetoes, I want to introduce. Gfinity had them. I thought it worked really, really well, and I'm obviously looking at the chat right now, kind of seeing what you guys have talked about when it comes down to map vetoes. Matt Wizzo says map vetoes need to come back. Talking about other things as well. Steven86 said, thank you for bringing up the maps. Kind of weird how COD only ones without veto. Yeah, man, it is kind of odd. Does Halo actually have map vetoes? I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. I need to see. I honestly need to check and see if they actually do. If anyone has any information on whether Halo does or not, I don't think that they do, but maybe they do. I'm not 100% sure. But either way, though, I'm going to go and shout out a couple people who have followed the stream already. Really, really do appreciate the support. Means a lot. I know this is kind of like a newer channel for myself, trying to get back on the Twitch grind that I used to do a good amount of the time. So I want to give a massive shout out to Techno Love, NY Punisher, Demoli, Dirk, what's up, man? Nemesis Jack, Father EN, and Nintendo One. Thank you very, very much for the follows. Really, really do appreciate it. But yeah, we were talking about map vetoes. Yes, Halo does every week. Okay, well there you go, man. They do. I wasn't for sure if they did, to be honest, or not. But this just goes to show, man, map vetoes are important. And I guarantee you, there would have been a lot of series that would have happened this weekend that would go way different. It's not just about who's playing against who. It's the maps. It's the specialist. It's obviously the ban number text. Those are massive, things that come integrated into it. When you're playing a series and you so happen to play this particular map each time, that could be your worst map. You could see inaccurate results due to randomness, which I'm obviously, not the biggest fan of. So, with that in mind, we've been talking about top teams. We've been talking about surprise endings to the tournament. Was that in relation to map vetoes? Maybe. We ended up seeing FaZe lose to DT, Optic losing to Luminosity Gaming, DT really kind of making it through the entire tournament. We'll talk about their run here in a little while. But there's a couple side topics that I want to talk about that I personally have brought up, that I tweeted out, not necessarily that are extremely controversial, but things that I think are important to kind of mention. And one of those is envious is John. John, to me, without a doubt, wasn't necessarily the MVP of the tournament. Because I think you could argue a number of different people for that. Personally, I don't even consider to be a person who says that the winning team always has to have the MVP. In my opinion, isn't always true. I think you, without a doubt, can have teams who, can have good runs that don't necessarily have the MVP on their squad. Because generally, if you're winning a tournament, most likely your 4 players, or at least 3 out of the 4, are playing pretty well. They could obviously arguably all be in that MVP category. However, I think for this tournament, John, to me, was playing absolutely lights out. And I'm honestly getting really tired of people comparing him and saying, you know what, it's a one-title thing. Only at times has he been playing well. And honestly, to me, he has had a fantastic Black Ops 3. Whenever he was on Luminosity Gaming, him and Saints with that sub-duo who looked absolutely fantastic, looked incredible. John had a pretty slow start to Black Ops 3, wasn't playing his best Call of Duty. But throughout Stage 1, throughout Stage 2, this man has been so consistent. And I think that he still is kind of an underrated player in this game because people do not realize the amount of plays that he makes on the map. To me, it is absolutely exceptional, the kind of stuff that this guy does. And realistically, I don't even know, to me, he has an unlimited, really, I don't even know what the term is called. Unlimited ceiling, right? I mean, his ability to make plays is absolutely insane. If you looked at hardpoints, if you looked at uplink, CTFs, he was the guy grabbing the uplink, he was the guy grabbing the CTF flag, making big plays, making sure the CTF flags didn't go in at the last second, and hardpoint him and Slasher were tearing it up. That was a major issue that a lot of the squads who played them just could not take over. They could not, in some ways, handle what the envious slang, I guess you could say, what was kind of coming up against them. You have Slasher, who's a dominant AR, and many would regard, in my opinion as well, he's a top 5 AR in this game. He can also translate to a sub, which is incredible, but he's not going to do that because he's the main AR for the team. J-Cap's kind of like that secondary AR, third sub for the team. But you watch them play against H2K, who got absolutely smashed by Envy. Incredible start for them. Definitely gave them a lot of confidence. They let her go up against Rise Nation. To me, my favorite matchup in all of Call of Duty Esports. I mean, it lived up to the hype. It was a close 4-1, but it's the fact that Rise Nation just cannot hang. They cannot hang with the envious slaying presence whenever John is playing his best, whenever you have Cap playing pretty consistently in the uplinks and the CTF especially, but when John is going off, Envious reaches another level, which I have not seen another team do since Optic Gaming and Scum. It's true. It's the fact that, Envious is a talented team, but it's the fact that they can rely on different people. Apathy can go off. You have John who can go off. And you also have Slasher, who's one of the best ARs in the game. They have 2 top 5 players in each gun category, being the AR and the SMG, and John and Slasher. And that is a combination which is incredibly scary, and not too many teams have that. I think you maybe put Rise Nation in that category. Maybe you put I think you put maybe Looney and Octane in there. Top team in the game. You have Optic Gaming, of course, Scump. You have Formal as well in the AR and the SMG category. There aren't many teams who have that. There are not too many teams who have a big 3, if you want to kind of put that in sports terms. Not too many teams who have that big 3. But the top teams in the game manage to have that. And Envy, who in my opinion is a top 3, if not top 2 team in the world right now, has that. And John is the main person behind all of that slang, behind all really of just that work that he puts in. And to be honest, I think it's just credit to how talented this man is, and he constantly proves it day in and day out. So yeah, that's just a discussion that I wanted to talk about. John's performance, definitely to me, the impact of a top 5 player. I want to see him continue this though through COD XP, because if it's not happening at COD XP, if it's not happening in Orlando, Envious are not going to be the same Envy, and they're not going to make it as far as they would like. So with that in mind, I'm kind of looking at the chat, getting your guys' thoughts, talking about John, talking about other stuff. Thank you, Define OG. Love you too, pal. Thank you very much. Appreciate the love. I know people are talking about the top teams in the world. Dan the Wolf said, I expected Luminosity to own DT. What happened? Upsets? As far as like the Luminosity and DT game, it was a very close series. I mean, we can all regard that. You can look at the title of Best of 7 or Game of 7 and realize that it was a close game, because it realistically is. I don't really know the exact map records versus each other as far as like previous encounters and stuff, because I realistically didn't really expect them to find each other due to the fact of one of them playing Optic, one of them playing FaZe. Which I think everyone could kind of get a little bit of a grasp on. But Dream Team came out, won the hard point, which to me was a little bit surprising. I thought we would see Luminosity have a pretty strong performance. DT ended up winning that one 250 to 120. In my mind, I was thinking, wow, DT is continuing on this process. They're continuing on this absolute dominance that I personally didn't really necessarily expect. We later went on to the uplink. DT wins that one as well. They're controlling the respawns, which to me was definitely not something that I predicted. I thought Luminosity would come out and control the respawns, and DT would come out and maybe win the searches, maybe try to win an uplink or a CTF, something along those lines. However, that was not the case. We head over to Game 3, Search and Destroy. LG wins the search. Thank God they win the Search and Destroy, man. That was absolutely huge for them. We later go on to Game number 4, which is obviously CTF, I believe, on Breach. DT narrowly wins that one, so that means they're up 3-1. They win that CTF 3-2. And then for game number 5, we would head over to Hardpoint, in which case Luminosity would come out, destroy them on evac. A very close quarters game. I think they ended up banning out the Man of War, which is obviously a huge thing for DT. A lot of the time when it comes down to it, you think Man of War going to be in Chino's hands. Killa can't use an M8, so he's got to run something else besides that. Most likely, a Man of War, if depending on the map, and so on and so forth. And then we head over to game number 6, which was Uplink. Luminosity wins that one as well. So we see 2 straight respawns from DT. We see a response in the search coming out of Luminosity, which is obviously big for them. Then we see another one from Luminosity later on in the next hard point after that, and then it would come down all the way down to Game 7, and it would be over on Hunted, in which case DT would win that one 6-2. Now, I'm glad we ended up talking about this. I'm glad whoever mentioned that in the chat did, because it's important when it comes down to the grind, when it comes down to that last round that DT has to do, or has to win really, to make it to the grand finals. It's Killa, right? Killa's in a 1 versus 2. He's coming toward, back cave, and he has an opportunity to make a huge clutch play, right? He has an opportunity to make a huge clutch play, and he makes the same play that he did back in Black Ops 2, and it was, Farico. Frico versus Envy, right? Proofy, I forget the map, what it was called, but still, it was a 1 versus 1. Killa ends up taking down one player, and then the last player, I believe that might have been Study, he was on the bomb site, wasn't sure if he should plant it or not. It's the same situation. It's the same similar situation where Killa is able to escape with his life. The player doesn't have time to plant the bomb and get it down. It's Killa's veteranship that ended up walking away with the game, and it's so important to mention too, because clutch situations, man, Killa can get in people's heads, and I think the reason why we saw DT have such a strong performance wasn't necessarily due to the slang. It wasn't necessarily to the slang that Killa provided, but to me, it was all about the teamwork. It was all about the slang consistency that we saw, especially out of Chino and Diabolic, and Cinder as well at times, but in the back, it's got to be, at least in my opinion, a massive showing from Killa. Cannot give enough respect to those guys. Had an incredible tournament, and I think they deserve the utmost respect, because they definitely proved a lot of people wrong, including myself. So Next thing we're going to talk about is obviously, the Optic bringing up, for those who didn't catch Crimsix's video, he ended up uploading a video talking in some ways about the loss that they ended up suffering. Was it, just an issue that got outplayed? In his opinion, he said, we were practicing, but we didn't really give too much of a crap, really, about the tournament. We were thinking in the back of our heads, we don't have a whole lot of respect for the Call of Duty World League. They had, with all the issues that we saw throughout Stage 2, I can't really blame them for, in some ways, maybe not taking this as seriously as they would like. It's like trying to go over to someone's house and you know that they've been kind of bad-talking you, is the way that they can kind of describe it as. But yeah, they come into this tournament not really heavily practiced. They talk about the maps that they were kind of struggling with. Their uplink performance has not been great. If they lose a hard point, they're definitely a little bit of a grind. Their Search and Destroy has looked impeccable. As far as the online league, them and H2K, I believe, tied with the overall search record, which was not at all the same result that we saw in Stage 1. They come out and they just have a slow performance, right? They go all the way down to Game 7. LG ends up clutching up. We saw a really good series from these two at Anaheim, I believe, which came down to a pretty far map record. LG narrowly ended up losing that one, so they get their revenge. But Optic just not performing up to standards. The practicing was not there, but this is not an excuse. This is not an excuse that you can take, because I'm tired of seeing people say, oh, this is the reason why Optic lost. And great, there could be reasons. South Carolina, I totally understand when people say, the controllers were a problem, that it never happened before. I can take that one, right? I can totally understand that. That is a problem that was not in their control. But when it comes down to practicing, no one's going to give H2K, no one in their right mind is going to say, H2K, it's not a problem that they end up losing. It's the fact that stuff happened and things just weren't on point for them. It's one tournament. You can't take that into consideration. No, H2K did not practice. Optic Gaming did not practice. They both lose in the first round, and everyone is going to talk about how H2K didn't perform, but Optic gets a way out. And I'm not a fan of that. I don't take that into consideration. I don't think that that's a valid excuse, because if you don't practice, you don't practice. And Crimsix kind of explained in his video, he didn't use it as an excuse. He just said we didn't practice enough, that we weren't taking this event really seriously. But if we know anything about Optic Gaming, it's that when they lose a tournament, when they're in a bad mood, they come out and really, realistically, you do not want to play Optic Gaming whenever they are a mad team. So I think when it comes down to Orlando, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they perform. That is a massive tournament heading into Call of Duty XP, because everyone's watching that. Everyone is looking at that particular tournament heading into Call of Duty XP and saying, you know what? This is the tournament where we can take the most accurate results. I guarantee you, whoever gets top 4 at that tournament is going to come out at Call of Duty XP and really make a huge name for themselves. So I'm personally really looking forward to seeing that tournament. I think it's going to be a fantastic one. But obviously, the most important tournament that's going on right now is Call of Duty XP. It's the one everyone's thinking about, everyone's talking about, and I'm personally really looking forward to kind of seeing how that kind of lines itself out as. So, with that in mind, I'm kind of debating on whether I want to go on the topic of viewership, if I want to go on to roster changes, talk about DT. We already talked about the lack of practice, so on and so forth. But I think we're going to take a quick break. Guys, when we return, we're going to be finishing off talking about other stuff, talking about the, I guess you could say the roster changes that are kind of being rumored. Aches is playing with Ricky. Ricky's not really playing with his complexity roster, so we'll see how that goes. We'll be right back. We just finished at 9:20. We'll be right back. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's the HUD, and we're back talking, obviously, about some competitive Call of Duty. We covered a lot of things already, so if you're just entering into the show, welcome to the HUD. Your host, Mr. Landon. Lando Sanders. You can hear the Office references in the background. I don't know how this day could be any better, if I'm honest with you. I don't know how this day could be any better, but no. HUD, we're talking, obviously, in our first episode, we've been talking about the Call of Duty World League Stage 2 Finals. We've been talking about a number of different things. We covered a lot of topics already, so for those who might have missed it, you can obviously go back, watch the VOD. Really appreciate all the followers and all the viewership we've gotten up to this point. Of course, we talked about the brackets. We talked about the map veto situation. I talked about John's impact on Envious. The Rise of Old, are they back? Is it really just the whole point of Envy being better than them, or is it Rise Nation who just cannot get to that next level? Is it an issue with Rise Nation, or is it just Envy who is that much better? That is the question that we talked about a little bit earlier. Kind of gave my input on everything. We talked about Optic Gaming. It is a loss. I think we've kind of come to that decision. Everyone in the chat has kind of agreed. You cannot go into a tournament practicing and expect to get away with it and say that, we didn't practice and get away with an excuse. Optic did not make that excuse. I'm not saying that they did make that excuse. I think they've taken it with overall just an overall good mindset, saying, you know what, we didn't practice well. We didn't have a whole lot of respect for the Call of Duty World League because in their opinion of what they think kind of went down in their situation and so on and so forth. So I think they've taken it with class, and I really, really respect it a lot. But now, it is obviously time to talk about our final topics of the show for the HUD today. We're talking about, obviously, roster moves. Roster moves, which seem to kind of be bringing up. It's not really something that's been talked about too much, but they are obviously going to be evident when it comes down to the next couple of weeks as everyone kind of prepares for MLG Orlando, as well as Call of Duty XP. So there are technically already 6 qualified teams for from Stage 2 who have qualified for Season 2 finals. And also, that means that every other team besides those top 6 have an ability to make a roster change. So with that in mind, roster changes are looming. It is now time, since everyone's going to be getting back from Stage 2 finals, to start making some roster moves, to start making some moves that they think can better improve their team. Some hot topic teams who have kind of been brought up as of recently have been squads like H2K, have been teams such as Complexity, which I think is almost a guaranteed roster to make something happen. People have been talking about potentially TSM, maybe even FaZe, which I think FaZe is the hot topic team that I want to talk about. I want to get everyone's opinion in the chat as well. Talking about FaZe, the issues that they've had throughout this entire, really throughout Black Ops 3. It's not just been, it's a recent issue. It's not been it's not really been a Rise problem where it's just kind of been these last couple of weeks, maybe even this last couple of months where they've kind of underperformed in the online league. It has been a consistent thing for them when it comes down to LAN. They have just not had the same ability, or really the same mindset, I guess you could say, that everyone was kind of thinking of. So with that in mind, we can kind of take a look at the placings as far as Black Ops 3 is considered. I don't really consider Totino's to be an official event, at least in my opinion. It's more of like a qualification. It's more of a showcase, in my opinion. We take a look at South Carolina. Whether you want to throw that in there or not, that's up to you. They end up placing 5th through 8th. They obviously end up having the regular season when they finished 3rd, Stage 1 playoffs, 3rd through 4th, ESWC, 5th through 8th, MLG Anaheim, 4th, Stage 2 regular season, 3rd, Pro Point Series, that you can kind of count that in there or not, and also Stage 2 playoffs, 5th through 8th. A FaZe team coming from Advanced Warfare, who was regarded as a top 2 team in the world, if not better than Optic Gaming. It was brought up, regardless of whether you think it or not. It was brought up. It was something that was talked about. Is it true? Is FaZe really better than Optic Gaming throughout Advanced Warfare? I think in the entire title, you've got to give it to Optic, of course, throughout Advanced Warfare. The amount of championships that they won, the amount of tournaments that they ended up having success in. Regardless, though, FaZe in Black Ops 3 has not looked up to point to where this is a roster who's in the middle of the pack, right? They're in the middle of the pack. People will put them in their top 4. They might put them in their top 5, their top 6. I think I saw someone's top 5 placings. It might have been a pro player. I can't remember who it was exactly, but they were saying they're their top 8 teams right now, and realistically, I don't know where I'd put FaZe at from the 5th to maybe like the 7th or 8th spot. Realistically, I don't know where I see that happening as far as the FaZe roster is considered, because do you put them above Elevate, who didn't even qualify, who didn't even make it through Stage 1? Granted, a lot of the issues that they ended up having, right? But the amount of problems that we saw from this FaZe lineup, could they perform? Would they have the placings that we expected them to, especially from Advanced Warfare? It has not been the same FaZe team. It's not been the same FaZe roster that everyone was looking at and saying, you know what, this is a team who's going to dominate. This is a team who's coming in this game. It's fresh for them. But you also have to consider, and I think the pregame jitters are out of the way, because, of course, we're on the downward spiral of Black Ops 3. Everyone's looking at Infinite War for the next title. But coming into Black Ops 3, you look at the players who are on this team, Bing, Clayster, Bing Attach, Enable, and Zuma. 3 of the 4 of these guys who have never played a Black Ops title competitively. Because why? Enable was playing Halo at the time. He didn't enter the Call of Duty scene until Ghost, I believe, as far as like playing on an actual competitive state, right? You have Attach, who is probably, I know he's been playing since like Call of Duty 4, but on a full level, when you look at him specifically, he wasn't really a major pro player until Ghost. When he kind of rose up with the Curse team, when he rose up with the Rise Nation team, and you also look at Zuma, wasn't really an established pro until Ghost either. So realistically, the only player who was playing competitive Call of Duty at the highest level during a Black Ops title previously was Clayster. But that is not an excuse that I expect to take anymore. It's not an excuse where I say, that I personally used, not that they've used, but I personally have used. Kind of gave them a pass, right? Because it's their first Call of Duty title as far as Black Ops considered. It's a different game. It's a different style. However, it's not the case, and FaZe fans are getting kind of mad about it. I've looked at Reddit, I've looked at the comments, I've looked at posts of videos, and them saying, you know what, this is like the Optic Gaming of Ghost, to where they could not perform. Granted, they would have good placings here and there, But I'm tired of watching what they would consider, the post series, or their what was it, like their Monday Blues, where they would post a video and talk about certain things. And I want to know people's comments, people's thoughts in the chat. Talking about FaZe, talking about their entire lineup. Whether, in your opinion or not, a roster change is needed. Because I have not seen that next level of FaZe where I'm like, that's the team that I'm expecting. That is the team to where I am looking at, and I'm saying that is the potential that I think can make them have a top placing at COD XP or at MLG Orlando. Because after MLG Orlando has happened, I don't know, man. I'm not content with the FaZe team. And I'm not saying should they make a roster change, right? Because that's not possible. Because they're already locked in, I believe, for Call of Duty Championship. So they can't make a roster change. But is this team a top contender? Is this a team where you can take, in some ways, is this a team where you can take serious when it comes into Call of Duty XP and say, you know what, they are a top contender. They can make a run. Because at Stage 2 Finals, people were saying, you know what, this is a talented squad. They didn't get that 18-4 hardpoint record. They didn't get that top spot in Stage 1 for no reason. They didn't get that spot for no reason. It's not like they didn't earn that, because they did, right? I mean, of course, there were, unfortunately, there were certain things that kind of came into bans, not really bans, but, forfeits and stuff. But they didn't get that record for no reason. Like I said, I'm not saying that should they make a change, because they can't, right? Because they're already locked in for champs. What I'm saying is that, do they have the potential? Can they make a run at Call of Duty XP? Because right now, I'm not sure if that's possible. I'm not sure at the top level of FaZe and Black Ops 3 if they can hit it, or if they've already hit it and we just haven't realized it because they haven't played up to the point where we expect them to kind of see, right? So that's the question that I'm asking. It's the question I'm asking the chat. It's the question that I'm asking really at all right now. Is can FaZe perform? Can they be at the top level? Because I've given away a lot of things. Talking about, FaZe, it's a slow start for them. AW was a really good moment. I mean, they had some good tournament runs. I mean, AW was not a joke, right? It wasn't like, oh, the jetpacking is an issue and stuff like that. To me, FaZe is a talented squad who has the ability to be a top team in this game. I'm not sure what it takes, because I made a super long video on my YouTube channel. I made a super long YouTube video where I was talking and saying, essentially, that, what am I trying to say here? I made a video essentially kind of talking about the FaZe roster changes earlier. I can't remember what tournament it was after. It might have been after ESWC. I can't really remember. But my whole point of that video was saying, shouldn't FaZe make a roster change? Should they make a roster change? Is it in their best interest to try and make something happen with this team when nothing seems to be going their way? And in my opinion, I didn't think that they would make a roster change, which of course did not happen. I didn't think it realistically would. I mean, who would you add to this team? That's a major question to be asking too. At that time, like I said, I'm not saying that they can make a roster change, because it's not possible. But at that time, when a roster change could have happened, they didn't make it. However, they did make a role change. They switched Zuma from being that main AR player to kind of switching back to a sub, getting rid of that scythe, putting on the kinetic armor, making attached switch to something else. They made the role change, which I think vastly really improved a lot of their gameplay. That's when their hard points started to rise. That's when they started to look a lot better as far as their respawn categories are concerned. Because I think I can actually pull up a stat page which has all the teams' wins and losses, which actually major credit to Dirk, who's actually in the chat right now, as well as Revan, who put together all of this win losses as far as game modes are considered. FaZe and Hardpoint were 18-4 in Stage 1, Stage 2, 14-15 in Search and Destroy, 15-7 in Uplink, and 6-6 when it comes down to CTF. So their Hardpoints and their Uplinks. This is a similar, not necessarily to the same extent, right? But this, to me, is a team who looks very similar to Optic Gaming as far as Stage 1 is considered when it comes down to their slaying roles, because they looked absolutely incredible when it comes down to Hardpoint. They had game modes. I think they went 4-2 on Fringe. They have a 6-0 Breach record. They had a 5-0 Evac record, and they were 3-2 on Stronghold. 2 out of the 4 maps they were undefeated on when it comes down to this game. And it so happens that one of their 4 losses that came, actually 2 of their 4 losses that came from their Hardpoints, were actually from DT. One of them, not necessarily in the most fair fashion, but the one loss that they did suffer, which was legit to DT, was in a hard point as well. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. So we talked about the DT, issues. DT ended up taking both hard points off of them. I'm not really sure as far as Stage 1 is considered how many hard points have kind of gone back and forth. But they didn't win a hard point this tournament. I don't think they even won. I think someone mentioned actually just now in the chat. Mini Black Bear, thank you very much for the comment, man. He says FaZe didn't win a hard point this land. They won a hard point this tournament, and you go 18-4 in the online league. there is something wrong. There's something wrong at that fact because, Grant, I can give them DT, right? Because they didn't win a game against them. They didn't win a hard point against them in the online league. However, is this team, and this is the same question I'm going to be asking, this is why I'm focusing so much on them because it's been a question throughout this entire season after the first 3 weeks, the first month or month and a half since this game came out has been, is FaZe making a roster change a logical decision? Is it something that we can consider? Is it something that's probable? Is it something that's likely? Is it something that's going to improve this team? But along with that question that people ask is, who do you get rid of? Who do you take out of this team to make them, in quotes, in your opinion, better? Who do you add to this roster to improve them? Do you get rid of Attach? Do you get a new sub player? Do you get rid of Zuma? Do you get rid of the AR players? Is Clayster not doing it for you anymore? Is Enable not playing as consistently as you'd like? And to be honest, I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure what to think of FaZe right now. I think that they are a talented team. I think they have the capability to do very, very well. I think someone actually mentioned in the chat. I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I said that FaZe has not won a whole hard point or one hard point this entire tournament, I think realization kind of came into my brain and saying they only played one matchup. I apologize for that. That was kind of dumb for me to say. Technically, it's true though. It is true that they didn't win a single hard point versus DT. They won a single hard point the entire tournament. Technically, it's true. But you guys get my point, right? It's just something is wrong for this team where it's just not happening. I think the search and destroys need to be improved. Either uplink hard points are obviously fine at times, but you can't be losing to DT, man. DT is a talented squad. You cannot be losing tournaments like this. You've got to be getting consistently top 4 placements to be considered a top team. And is Orlando going to happen for them? Obviously, it has to be because they're going to be playing with the same roster. I think adding Replays as a coach is a great decision. Replays is a brutally honest guy. He's played in the competitive scene. He's played with these guys in the past. He's the coach of this team. I'm not really sure how integrated he's been. I know he went with them to one of their I forget what it's called, like the IMG Academy, I think is what it was called, basically to kind of get their teamwork back on point in some ways. It's basically like an academy or not really a gym. It's basically like a place where you can travel to go and kind of improve your teamwork as a roster. And they were it's been like a major question. It's been a major thing people have talked about in Call of Duty esports, kind of being added to this thing. So I'm not sure how Replays has been kind of affecting this team, but I think it's only going to be positive from now on and forward because he's played the objective role. He knows how it feels to be an attach. He knows he's been the AR for our team as well, and back in Black Ops 2. He knows how Clayster feels. He's teamed with these guys. He's won a Call of Duty championship with both Clayster and Attach. He's been in their situation before, so I think he's going to add a lot of hope for these guys. But I've got to see something better from FaZe because right now it is not looking good. It's not looking likely that they are going to walk away with a good placing, at least, at Call of Duty XP. So my major question is, can they be taken seriously as a top contender heading into Orlando? Not just Orlando, but at Call of Duty XP, because it's a major topic to be talking about. Next team that we can talk about, I believe, people were talking about Cloud9 on whether they should make a change, on whether they should have something happen. That's a major topic that a lot of people have been talking about. I believe Cloud9 has mentioned before that they aren't going to make a change, I think. And realistically, would you make a change for Cloud9? My whole thing, and I'm not actually sure, are they a top 6 team? I'm trying to find out as far as like Call of Duty World or Call of Duty, or for COD XP, who is qualified or not. Let me actually look that up. I'm trying to actually find out to see who is officially qualified for that. I should know that, but unfortunately I do not know that. But as far as Cloud9 is considered, like I said, you do look at a number of different players. Havoc, a major slayer for this team. Along with Havoc, you have Lamagod, you have Happy, and you have the main AR for the team, who to me has been a huge rising star. He has been, I cannot say enough positive, enough overall just insane play that we have seen. Apologies, my mic went mute there for a second. From Assault, I was talking about Assault. I cannot point out how talented Assault has been. I think realistically, you can look at a team like Envious, and you can kind of compare them to the Cloud9 team. You can kind of compare them because you have a dominant sub player in Havoc, incredible sniper player as well, and then you have a younger AR, similar to Slasher. Slasher's a little bit older than him. Has a little bit more experience. He's got a title under his belt, I guess you could say. However, to me, Cloud9, in order to be a top squad in the world, has got to make something happen. I think they need a change, But who do you put in there, man? Who do you put in there as a potential fill-in for a team like this? I realistically don't know. I don't know who's available, because I mean, you can take a look at the complexity guys. That roster to me is kind of done with. I think that roster is going to be done. Because I've been watching the 500 series, Aches and Ricky were play with one another, and I think Parasite, Miracles, and Ricky were tweeting out saying that they needed someone for the tournament. So that just kind of goes to show that, at least as far as that is considered, that team might be split apart. That team might be kind of done for, at least. But people are kind of talking in the chat. I see happy for Silly. That's something that's that's something that you can kind of bring up. That's true. Silly, who's currently on Cloud9 Eclipse. I think it was a really good decision that people don't really kind of take into consideration. That there is an opportunity for Cloud9 to make another change, because that's what they did with Mochilla, right? Mochilla was playing, Assault was on the Cloud9 Eclipse roster. What did they do instead of to get like a whole massive roster change out of the way? What did they do? They substitute a player on their Cloud9 Eclipse roster and add him to their Cloud9 roster, the regular team. It's an easy situation where they could do something like that. So that's definitely an opportune thing to kind of bring up as far as the Cloud9 team is considered, because I don't think they have officially qualified. I don't think the Cloud9 is in the ringer yet. Another team being H2K. Now, H2K to me is a team who I think will stick together against what I would consider to be better judgment, because I personally think that H2K needs something drastically to happen to them. I think Lacefield is a great player. I think Lacefield to me is a top sub player in this game. He's motivated, and constantly times when you see people talk about their practice regimen, that was the thing that in the losing interview that they had after they had obviously lost at this tournament, Fizzerp went and I think he was talking to Maven. He was like, you know what, we didn't really practice heading into this event, and that immediately caught me, because before the whole Optic thing, before people talk about Optic and saying certain things, is that how do you come into this tournament? Because I can give it to Optic, right? I can give it to Optic Gaming and say, you know what, you guys are the top team in the world, bar none. You are the top team in the world. It's lonely at the top is the word that I can say, the sentence that I can describe. It's lonely at the top. However, when you are a team who narrowly makes it into stage 2 finals, because it was Rise Nation versus Elevate. Loser of that game, or if Rise ended up losing that game in game 5, I think, or something like that, game 4 maybe, it was a close series, right? The winner of that game, whether it was Rise, then that would obviously send Luminosity or H2K through. If they end up losing, that's Elevate's ticket into making the top 8. You make it by the narrowest of margins, and you come into the stage 2 finals to not practice? How does that happen? What is the practice regimen? What is not working for this team? And there's been a lot of people saying that it's been Fears, it's been Fizzerp who aren't wanting to play for the team. It's been a reoccurring issue as of late, and that's something that's very uncharacteristic from Fizzerp, right? I think Fizzerp to me has been a player who I've watched, whether he's been on a team in the Call of Duty World League or been a team in the current league at that time, and he has been a grinder, man. He has been a guy who is constantly playing in Search and Destroy tournaments. He's a guy who's constantly been making his impact on a roster, however that's been, but it's been through practice and hard work, learning strategies, playing Search and Destroy, and doing his best. And to hear that he has not been practicing, that it's really been Legal and Lacefield who have been carrying the weight for trying to practice, there was something that just does not that puts me at a loss for words, because how are you guys not practicing as a team and you narrowly make it into stage 2 finals? I don't know, man. That to me is unacceptable. It's a thing where I look at the team and I'm like, what is wrong with us? How is only 2 of us wanting to practice? And that's a point where I said we've got to split apart, at least in some ways, because something is not working to where we can't even practice for the stage 2 finals. How am I going to expect you to practice for Call of Duty XP? And I can grant it. I can say that I can understand how when you're playing the Call of Duty World League, when you're playing in this league, that's in some ways a lot of practice, because you're getting a lot of practice. You're playing these maps. You're playing against these teams. It's like playing scrims. It's scrimmages. You are playing them. But there is something outside of the league that you have to continue to improve on, because to me, it's like the Call of Duty World League right now for these players, for these teams who play, it is a test. It's a test. Like, say you're in school right now, it is a test. This is how we perform. We have 2 tests a week, which is it's terrible if you actually have that if you're in school right now. But the Call of Duty World League to me is a test, right? You're taking a test, you're trying to improve, you're trying to do your best, and that's ultimately what people look at. That is your grade, right? That is your grade. Your top 8 placing, your top 12 placing in the Call of Duty World League, that is your grade. H2K, I don't know. I have a hard time trying to explain this. practice to me is in some ways like homework. Practice is a homework. Your league matches are your tests. If you are not studying, if you're not going over film, if you're not going over, in some ways, the things that you need to work on, your uplinks, are they your issue? Are search and destroys our problem? Is one guy just not playing up to his potential? Do we need to switch roles? Is something need to happen? That is the time where you practice. That is the time where you improve. So when it comes down to those tests, we can ace those. We can win games. We can at least compete with top teams in the world. And granted, if you're facing off against Optic and Rise that week and you go 0-2, that's okay. But look at the film. Look at the things we need to improve on, because when it comes down to moving forward and when it comes down to those tests, when it comes down to, in some ways, finals, you want to put those in air quotes because it works both in school as well as in the league, that is the time to look at your practice regimen and say, you know what, at least we've put in all the work that we can. At least we've improved, because you're going to come into that final and say, what is going on? Like, what are we doing right now? Like, what is our problem? How are we not making a run in this tournament? It's because you haven't put in the practice and you have not studied enough to get to the point where you can ace a test, where you can move it on in the tournament. And that's what separates the best teams from the lower ones. And that's why we've seen a lot of squads kind of struggle. Guys, we'll be right back. More Call of Duty talk here from the HUD. I believe we'll taking questions from the chat and kind of concluding what has been a fantastic Stage 2 final. Be right back. Welcome back. It is currently nearly the top of the hour. Currently for me, 9:50. Where you are at in the world, I appreciate you for tuning in to the show tonight. We're obviously on the HUD right now, live from my room, essentially. But thank you guys for tuning in so far. For tonight, we obviously have a couple more topics to mention. We're going to be talking about viewership problems. Why did the Call of Duty World League Stage 2 finals only receive around 40,000 viewers at the very most, which happened in Optic Gaming first round matchup, in which case they ended up losing? Why did the finals only have around 30K? Single elimination champs. How is that a thing? Why is that a thing? How in the world are we going to live with that? Not sure. At least give me Matt Vito's, for the love of God. Last thing we're going to talk about is going to be DT. Who is going to be buying out the DT roster? Team who ends up coming out and surprising the entire world of Call of Duty. The entire Call of Duty community was put kind of stunned in some cases, and to see them walk through some incredible talent and to walk into that second spot, the runner-up at Stage 2 finals, and also some viewer questions, some comments that you guys have, things that you want to talk about to kind of close us out here for our first episode of the HUD. I hope you guys have enjoyed everything. Let's go and talk about viewership problems. So, oh man, I have been wanting to talk about this for a long time. The whole thing with viewership. I know pros have been very, very vocal about it, saying their opinions on the viewership, why it has not been up to the point, why Black Ops 3 has not lived up to the hype as far as viewership is concerned. Granted, I wasn't actually I wasn't able to watch the Anaheim totals as far as viewership is concerned. I believe we hit around 100K, at least a little bit over 100K. So that's kind of like the last event comparison. I guess you wouldn't make it that way. It is MLG Anaheim, though, to be honest. But I'm not happy with the amount of tournaments that we've had this year. I know people kind of bringing that in the chat. I think Matt Wizzo mentioned lack of events, to be honest. I think along with that, the reasoning why we had a big lack of viewership for that in this tournament, you've got to bring up the obvious, right? You got to bring up the complete obvious is the fact, well, Optic Gaming is not in the finals. As much as I would love to say that's not true, it is the case. Because if Optic Gaming is in the finals, you automatically increase the viewership. If not double the viewership, you at least add on maybe 20, 30K, depending where you're at in the tournament. If it's the finals, if it's a Game 7 finals, if they're coming down from the losers, if they're coming from the losers bracket and Optic wins the first best of 7, it's coming down to second best of 7. If there's not at least 90K people in that room, then I do not believe that we are officially on Twitch, I swear. But along with Optic Gaming getting knocked out fairly early on, it is the fact that it is, at least in my opinion, a non-LAN environment feel. When you are watching this tournament, if you are a person who rarely watches Call of Duty, maybe you watch the finals here and there. If you're an avid viewer, then you kind of understand the whole reasoning why certain things happen. That's the reason why we saw a pretty much dedicated 15, 20, at times 30K viewers, because they understand, right? They understand what this tournament means. It's not a LAN. It's not a tournament where we look at it and say, you know what, this is the reasoning why certain things are going on. This is why you hear like 5 people clapping in the background. What gets people excited is when they see a full crowd absolutely going crazy. When they hear a crowd going crazy, when they hear certain things happening, a non-LAN environment to a viewer is a snorefest. It is someone who doesn't enjoy watching Call of Duty esports, or really just esports in general, right? Because I love the format that CSGO has, and I hate to compare Call of Duty to CSGO, but when someone is completely doing everything correctly, it's very hard to not compare them. CSGO has a format to where at major tournaments, which I think they have like 4 or 5 a year, I think the most recent one was at the ESL 1 Cologne, but at all of their major tournaments, essentially how it goes is that they have I'm not going to give exactly specifics or anything like that, like not give a full recap, but essentially they go, and it's basically a place. It's like a smaller little event. They have an analyst desk, they have a commentator desk, they have a camera you can see the players, but it is a smaller location to basically where those teams qualify to get into the major, to get into the place where you can actually play in the arena. Now granted, Call of Duty doesn't have the numbers right now to play in an arena. You're not going to be playing at Staples Arena or anything crazy like that. You're not going to be in this huge arena and stuff like that, at least for right now. Anaheim was a different story. Call of Duty XP will be a different story. I'm not sure about Orlando. I'm not sure where the venue is at for that. However, if you want to do it that way, if you want to have Call of Duty grow in some cases as far as LAN tournaments are concerned, you've got to put it in a place where spectators are being sold out, where there's a lot of production involved, where you're traveling, you're going to different places, because, I love the ESL studios. They're fantastic. It's a great place to go, but when you hear 5 or 6 people yelling in the background, when you see the smoke machines kind of rise up, I mean, it's basically like no offense, but it's like you're at like a weather broadcast and you're just kind of staring at the background. Now, that's no hate, obviously. There's no hate to anything that Call of Duty World League has done. Not at all. But I'm saying a way to improve, and I think the way that the viewership can be increased is by having that LAN tournament feel, by having the crowd in the background, by being able to see and going over to different streams. It needs to be an event, not just like an event in air quotes, saying like, oh, in a LAN tournament, or people like to call it land tournament, but it needs to feel like a tournament. It needs to feel like an actual place that I want to go to. And honestly, I was perfectly content staying at home watching it from here, because I'm not really sure how the viewing experience was at the ESL studios. I'm sure it was fine. I'm sure it was great. I'm sure it was a fun time. I'm sure it was overall a great experience, but at home to the viewers, it's just not something that I'm super excited in watching. So to me, I think that was a massive reasoning why. It's like watching the LAN. It's like watching the online league, but just with a crowd, right? It's literally just like watching the online league, but with a crowd and a camera on the players. Now the camera on the players and stuff like that is fine, but to me, I prefer, if we're going to have a setup like that, is where we need to have, like I said, a similar CSGO setup where, granted, you can have the first 2 days, the qualification. If you have a major tournament or whatnot, you can have the teams play in a smaller, area where spectators may be able to watch, maybe not be able to watch, but there needs to come a point to where we're selling places out. We need to have tournaments going down. We need to have an event arena, some ways where we can have a major crowd watching this, so that they can get hype and understand what exactly is going on. So to me, at least in my opinion, not taking consideration in the game, not taking anything out of that, but to be honest, when it comes down to what we have right now, I'm just not a huge fan of being able to be in the studios to where it's kind of like a smaller event, it's kind of like a smaller setting. I'm just not a big fan of that. I'm not sure what anyone else thinks about it. We can obviously talk about that, had that in the live chat, which everyone can see right now on the screens. And we're not talking about the game stuff. We're not talking about, oh, there's jetpacks in the game, oh, there needs to be boots on the ground, which I completely agree with. However, that is a major problem. I think why we saw so much viewership issues. I know people were talking about EVO, what's going on, which definitely could play a case, as much as people don't really want to think that's true. Whenever there's a big event going on that weekend, along with the Call of Duty event, things are gonna take a toll, right? Things are gonna happen to where, you know what, I want to watch EVO, I want to watch Smash, I want to watch whatever game that you like at EVO, right? That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen, and it just so happens that the grand finals of both, EVO the grand finals all day are going on, but it just so happens that when that is going on, it really can take a massive toll on overall on viewership. So, along with that, let's get into the talks of single elimination. I know that's everyone's favorite topic. It is something to me to where I just want to like hit my head against the wall and be like, how are we having single elimination at tournaments? And it is 2016. We've had Call of Duty for so long. Why is single elimination a thing? And if you're going to do single elimination, at least give me map vetoes. At least give me to where we can knock down the randomness. Now, as much as people have argued, as much as people have said that single elimination makes it entertaining, as much as people said that single elimination is fun because you are one game away from losing, we need double elimination. We need a UMG style. I'm not saying UMG in particular, really MLG style as well. We need a format like that to where there can be an open bracket or something like that. There can be a format to where if someone loses, it's not the end of their run. They didn't fly 1,000 miles around the country. If you're from Europe, you literally go down to the open bracket, for God's sakes, where at least it's double elimination there for the event that they attended. But when it comes down to major events, I know MLG has done it this way. I know MLG has talked about it, doing double elimination. I'm not sure how Orlando is working. I hope that's not single elimination. But the fact that Call of Duty Championships, or Call of Duty XP, $2 million tournament, one series can knock you out of the money. If Optic Gaming has the same series that they had against Luminosity, if something slips up, if one of the players doesn't play on point, one series dictates that. One series literally dictates who wins, or not really who wins, because you got to keep moving on. But one series can literally knock. Imagine this. Imagine that we're looking at Call of Duty XP. This is supposed to be the most accurate. Everyone who's going to win. Call of Duty XP, who are the champions of this tournament, and it is decided by a format that if you lose one game, one series, you are knocked out of the biggest tournament of the year. One series can decide your fate. And I can understand when it comes down to making it to the grand finals, the semifinals, you get knocked down to the losers bracket, you have to make it back. I can understand that. I can understand where they're trying to come from and making it more exciting, potentially trying to get out of certain things. But at least when it comes down to the most important tournament of the year, we have got to make this double elimination. We cannot allow this to happen, because I don't believe that we're gonna get the most accurate overall standings, most accurate results if we are seeing single elimination tournaments. I don't know, man. This has been an issue that I've talked about throughout the entire year. Stage 2 finals is the Call of Duty World League. You know what? I'll give them that. They can have that. They can have single elimination. That's fine. But we cannot have single elimination. I will literally fight till the death to try and get this to be a thing to where we can have double elimination back again, because as much as maybe it's fun for you guys to watch, but maybe not really, I'm not saying you guys, but maybe it's fun for people to watch it. Maybe it's fun for people to say, you know what, I enjoy watching single elimination because every time I watch it, one team or this team is one loss away. It's more intense. I can understand that. But I just want the traditional style. I just want the traditional style to where we see double elimination, whatever, pool play. I don't mind pool play. If anything, I love pool play. If you just want to have like a regular style bracket, like a playoff bracket, I can understand that as well. But what I want is best of 5, double elimination. If you want to do best of 7s, that's on you. When we've done tournaments this year, where there hasn't been very many, we've had single elimination, best of 7s. So if you don't have best of 7s, I can give you that. There's going to be a lot of teams, like 30, 35 teams here. Good luck doing best of 7s, although they're going to have like 4 or 5 streams most likely. So you can kind of get rid of that. However, the fact that the single elimination is riding on this is, to me, unacceptable. It is unacceptable to the point to where I'm disappointed. I really am. I'm not mad. I'm not sad. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed that we have got to the point to where we're having single elimination dictate who wins Call of Duty XP, who wins the $2 million, however, percentage after that. The $2 million prize for the biggest state in Call of Duty esports history can be decided by one series. Like I said, man, you come out slow, you don't play well, you have an awkward matchup for you, it's going to be difficult. And the qualification, I believe, for Stage 2 finals, the teams who haven't made the top 6 from NA, they're guaranteed to go to the tournament. The other players, they're going to have to make it through online. And you know what? I can understand that. I can understand. You're not going to invite every single team to a LAN position. But just imagine you go up against a team. I mean, who's going to say that someone who boots you out of the game? Because that can happen. There are so many things that are going to come into this qualification process which aren't going to be accurate because of single elimination, because of online qualification for this tournament. And I can understand online qualification. I can understand that. That is, to me, a situation to where I can understand. You don't want to invite, 30, 60 teams to a LAN center. You're not going to be able to provide the money for that. However, something needs to be done to where we at least have these matches being double elimination. And people have been talking about best of 11 champs. I would love that. I think that's fantastic. More games, the merrier. When you have the best two teams in the world at that tournament, if not in the world, best players, best teams in Black Ops 3, have them dueling out. Give them a best of 11. I would love that. But to me, single elimination, it's something that I look at. I'm not happy with it. I'm not at a point to where I can say and understand to where they're coming from. I hope that they change it. If they don't, then we're going to see an inaccurate Call of Duty XP. We're going to see a tournament that whoever wins it, who you can insert team name here, but you're not going to see an accurate result at Call of Duty XP. You're not going to see the team. You're not going to see the most accurate results from a tournament when it matters the very most. If we have a single elimination, best of 7, best of 5, however it is, best of 7 format. So yeah, let's move on. Get out of the sadness. I'm not sure how LSU Orlando is going to line itself out. I'm hoping that it's best of double elimination. I'm not sure if it is or not. But if it is not, pretty sad for that tournament as well. But we'll move on. Last topic that we're going to mention before we bring up viewer comments, viewer questions. If you guys want to, feel free to start commenting in a few minutes to kind of talk about what we think is going to happen with. Or really just whatever you guys want to talk about. If you guys want to talk about questions, single elimination, double elimination, if you guys want to defend a topic, if you want to defend something that I've said that I have an opinion on, absolutely feel free to do it. I would love to hear someone else's perspective because my perspective isn't always right. Obviously, it's not always right. It's just my opinion, an opinion that I take very personally because of being in the Call of Duty scene for as long as I have. We've kind of beat that whole double elimination, single elimination thing to the ground. So last topic of the show before we start taking viewer questions and viewer comments, and actually I really want to, I know I'm getting off topic. One thing that I really want to do is actually to get a, not necessarily a Skype, like a phone thing to where I can have people call in, talk about certain things. I think that would be fantastic. I would love to have a format to where people can call in, talk about their opinions on certain stuff, and kind of move forward from that. So regardless of that, giving you guys a little bit of information as far as the show is concerned and things that I want to kind of improve things on, is about DT, right? Dream Team, no longer actually under the name DT. Well, technically they are, right? They're under the name DT for right now. However, the organization has decided, they released a statement, what was it, maybe the last couple of weeks at the Call of Duty World League, saying that they've officially released their team, kind of talking about teams and stuff, and that wasn't actually the only roster who did that. TSM does the exact same thing, releasing their roster. DT's obviously in a much better position than DT is right now, or was, but DT comes out, they're the runner-ups at Stage 2 Finals. They're the runner-ups at Stage 2 Finals, a team who is guaranteed to go to Call of Duty XP, no prior tournaments. There's nothing that's standing in their way to go to Call of Duty XP. You have a team who has an opportunity to win upwards of $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $400,000, was like $500,000. You best believe that they're getting much higher offers now that organizations realize, hey, we have an opportunity to win a lot of money. We have a lot of opportunity to get our organization out there at the biggest tournament of the year. Granted, it's single elimination, so they can be out in the blink of an eye. However, not talking about that. Organizations that could be interested, right? There are organizations who could be out there and looking to make something happen. Some organizations that you look at. TK, right? TK is an organization. Theory's on that team right now. Do you add Theory? Probably not, because you can't really change the roster. So do we have TK Blue and TK White? I don't know. Probably not. Not saying that TK can't pick them up, but I'm sure they're definitely an option to kind of talk about. Another organization might be Denial, right? Denial hasn't showed up through Black Ops 3. I know Royce McGirdles is bringing it up in the chat right now. Denial. Robbie, CEO, does he decide to get involved for champs? Is it his time to get involved for champs if a team is available? Do you go after it? That's the thing to be asking right now. Is DT worth it? I think the question is, DT worth it is at the window, because they are. DT is worth it. They're a team who is, without a doubt, worth it, in my opinion. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're buying DT, you're getting a solid team. Which I think cannot be argued anymore, especially after the performance this tournament. Granted, Optic gets knocked out early. Doesn't matter. They still performed versus LG. They still performed in the round 1 matchup. They played well, and they're a top team in the game. Regardless of what you think, they're at least a top 6, top 7 team right now in the world. If you want to base it on land performance, they're a top 4 team. We'll see what happens with that. Just kind of bring it from all perspectives. But I see some people kind of putting organizations in the chat, talking about certain things. Another organization that we could talk about, we talked about TK, we talked about Denial. Teams like who have been previously involved with Call of Duty, Team Liquid. Counter Logic Gaming. I see EG being talked about. Prophecy. Do we see old organizations? I saw someone mention Fnatic. Probably not. But do we see teams like that get back involved? Right? There's a spot available. And it has your name written on it. It's all about how much you're willing to spend on them. It's about putting your name on the check and putting the total next to it, and to say if they are worth it or not. Yes, they are, but it's about the price. And after this tournament, I guarantee you, the price has risen. If they're not bought already, then the price has risen. The price has gone up on Dream Team, and if you want a spot at Call of Duty Champs, if you want an organization to be there, got to have a good chunk of money to want to buy these guys out. That's 100% sure. But it's not a question of, will a team buy them out? They have to. They have to have an organization coming into Call of Duty XP, heading into MLG Orlando, I would think, to at least be funded, right? Because I think they have a guaranteed spot at MLG Orlando. They have to have an organization representing them. We talked about, TK, Denial, TL, CLG. I saw someone mention Echo Fox. Probably not. Farico, Unite. Can we see some throwbacks? Probably not. But the thing is, though, we forgot one team besides TSM, which is obviously a very likely possibility, to be honest. TSM mentioned that they had their eyes on Call of Duty Champs. If someone has the article link, if you want to send it to me, I can put it in the chat right now. But TSM talked about in their article when they released their roster, they said, you know what? Us stepping away from Call of Duty isn't a permanent step. It's a step to where we're hopping off to the side and saying, this is an opportunity. We're willing to get back in the scene. Call of Duty Champs, they still have their eye on Call of Duty Champs, and if a roster is available, they will step on it. So, to me, TSM, number one contender to take this team right now, and to take DT right now. So, I think along with him, a major person who's been on the main front of being talked about is Nadeshot, right? Nadeshot's ability to have an organization right after Stage 2 finals, literally like the second after Stage 2, 100 Thieves ends up tweeting out saying, we've officially released our 100 Thieves roster. The team is no longer under our organization. So to me, is 100 Thieves really even out there? I think realistically, it's all about the price. It's not saying, it's the organization. Like, of course I want to join TSM over 100 Thieves. I don't really. It's not really DT's decision. It's not like Killa saying like I don't really want to play for 100 Thieves. It's not Diabolic saying I don't want to play for 100 Thieves. It's about who you get bought out by, and maybe I'm not sure. I think Neil's the owner of DT. I'm not sure if he'll take that into consideration. What's best for the roster, or for the organization. I think realistically, TSM to me is a squad who has a lot of potential. They're a team who is without a doubt worth it. But I think you do have to take into consideration Nadeshot. He buys 100 Thieves. He's bought a roster before. He's bought a team who was in a really good position, who had an opportunity to make a big impact. Granted, they don't have the best performance in the world, but he took a risk, and he did something that a lot of teams were offering. Because TK offered. They offered them. For what I heard. I heard that they offered the King Poppy team at the time. They didn't take it. They wanted to go with Nadeshot. Nadeshot hired them or gave them a higher offer. There were rumors that TSM had offered them something as well, trying to get rid of their team at the time because there was a lot of drama with them. Luminosity or something like that, I think at the time was kind of interested in the team before. Priorly, I'm not really sure how that all worked out. There was a lot of teams who were interested in King Poppy, and that was Stage 2. But this is called XP. This is Call of Duty XP. So to me, I think numbers are going to be thrown around. I think we're going to see a lot of teams interested, whether you see that behind closed doors talks or not. I'm not sure. But know that teams like TSM, teams like CLG, squads that we mentioned, EG, rosters who are no longer involved with Call of Duty, TK, Denial, they know that this team is available. They know that this team is out there. It's not, are they out there? Is there a team right now in Call of Duty who's good, who's out there right now? They know. They know that there's a team out there right now, and it's all about the question is, are they willing to spend whatever the amount of money is? Because I don't know. I don't want to even throw out a number to where I think that it could be, but know that after this tournament, it is without a doubt risen, if it's not bought already, and expect the announcement to come most likely before MLG Orlando. If it's not before MLG Orlando, I'll be very surprised. So, yeah, I don't know. They're out there. DT's available. I think they're a great squad. Really looking forward to seeing what kind of happens with that overall roster. So, with that in mind, it's now time to take some questions from the chat. I know you guys have been talking all stream long. I want to say a massive shout out to you guys. You guys have been absolutely incredible. Was not expecting whatsoever the amount of viewership that we've gotten. I think we were talking hardcore about roster stuff. We hit upwards of around 50 to 60 viewers. It's absurd for our first show. Really, really appreciate you guys' support for the HUD tonight. I'm trying to figure out a full-on schedule to get things worked out as far as this whole show is considered. But I want to give a massive shout out to you guys before we even start taking questions. But yeah, you guys are awesome. Really appreciate it. I'm going to shout out a couple followers that we've gotten where you guys can go ahead and generate your questions. Anything that you guys want to talk about, preferably Call of Duty related. But I want to give some massive shout out. I believe the last person that I had mentioned, actually, let me check here. I think was, I can't even find it. Where is? I can't even find it. Either way, though, shout out to Leviathan, Matt Wizzo.
Well, thank you, Ian.
Gintoki.
Thanks.
Alex is now live. X Zygus, PMTZ20, Tony IG. Shout out to JPHGA, Land Elevo or Land Elevo. I'm not even sure. Matty Boy 552, and just recently, thank you very much, Steven86 for the follow. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys want to stay up to date with my streams personally, as well as the HUD, make sure to obviously follow the channel, as well as really just follow the Twitter, the HUD TV on Twitter. Really appreciate the support. You guys will obviously be able to see everything when it comes down to the show with that particular things. So. Future shows, stuff like that, so on and so forth. So yes, I'm going to take a look at the top of the chat, take a look and seeing what kind of questions that we have gotten. Like I said, if you guys want to talk about, really ask anything, feel free, right? So the first question that I see was a few minutes ago from Faliberti. What is that, man? I remember him from previous streams as well, not just the HUD. He says, Landon, what's your thoughts on Parasite's tweet on fans watching their favorite team, but when they are out, they don't support the scene? That's a really good question, actually. That is a tweet that I looked at, and I was like, that is one of the truest statements that I have seen in a very long time, because whenever you ask someone who watches competitive Call of Duty, they always have a team in mind. Who is your favorite team? Who are you watching? Who's your favorite roster? So on and so forth. And to say and to bring up, are people really fans of Call of Duty, the game, or are they fans of the players themselves? 100%. Not of the fans, but it's 100% true of a statement to mention that a lot of the viewership that we get is from fans of the teams, not fans of the game specifically. Of course, fans of the game are going to play a part. That's the reason why Black Ops 2 has gotten, or really Ghost. I think Ghost was the peak of viewership that we've ever gotten in Call of Duty esports. Many people don't actually know that 130K is actually what we hit during Call of Duty Champs for Black Ops 2. A lot of people think it's like a lot higher than that. However, though, it is 100% true of a statement to say that a lot of the viewership that Call of Duty gets is because of the teams, the players themselves, the personalities, besides the game itself. 100% true. So, yeah, definitely a good question for you, Faliberti. Definitely agree with Parasite on that one. Going to move on and kind of see what other questions that we're getting. See, Dan the Wolf says, I think Team Fear might come back. It's definitely possible. I know the Fear guys have made some rumors here and there, talking about certain things. Bringing up the possibility of trying to bring Fear back. For those who don't know, a major organization when it came down to the beginning of Call of Duty's competitiveness. One of the main staples as far as really a main staple when it comes down to organizations in Call of Duty. Players like John, Fear, Fizzerp, John. I don't know if I mentioned Sharp already. I mean, a lot of guys who are known players. The competitive scene, I know Sharp is retired, but a lot of guys. I'm muted. What happened? Is everything good? I apologize. Hopefully everything is good. I'm not sure what that happened. What I was saying, though, Fear, the topic of Fear, we've seen a lot of players come from that particular organization in past, and it would not surprise me if we do see Fear trying to make a comeback for later titles. They tried it for Black Ops 3. They tried... Charlie, you never got muted? Okay. Thank you, guys. I was really confused. I was like, did something just happen? Did the chat just pull a fast one on me? It looks like the guys did. Either way, though, if there was a problem, I do apologize. You guys ever want to put code red in the chat, that always means mute as far as my streams are considered. So if you guys want to do that, feel free to. But, topic of Fear. Do I ever see them coming back? It's a possibility. Is it likely? Maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. To answer your question, it's kind of like an up in the air thing right now. Quick question from Checking COD. He says, if Optic loses COD XP, what do you think happens? Retirement? Changes? I don't think we'll see retirement. Changes is a possibility because it's a new title. I cannot imagine the amount of stress that would happen if Optic does lose Call of Duty XP, and I can only imagine the amount of stress that they're getting right now because it's not like Optic's on top. It's not like we're winning every single tournament.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andy.
And it's not like we're unbeatable because they've been beaten. This isn't the Optic from Advanced Warfare. It was like they can win at every single moment. There were times where Optic was down 2-0 or 0-2, whatever you want to say, and Optic would win a map, and I'm like, they're winning the series. They're winning the series because there's like, if Optic won a map, if they got any motivation, if they got any leverage, no pun intended there. If they got anything, if they got any ounce of momentum, they were going to win that series. That is not the case with Black Ops 3. Not taking anything away from Optic, whether they've improved or whether they've declined from title to title, or whether other teams have gotten better, because I think it's got a little bit of both. But if they do not win Call of Duty XP, that is a massive, massive loss to that team, to that dynasty in Call of Duty esports. There's not been many dynasties as far as COD is considered. You could put teams like Farico, maybe even the old Envy or Fear up there. You put Complexity, obviously, which is to me the number one team of all time. But you've got to win the chip. You've got to win the biggest tournament of that title to be considered, or at least to be into the entire discussion of the best team of all time. Because without a doubt, they're there. They are at the level of where Complexity is at. They can see the top, but it is about winning the number one tournament. It's about showing up at this tournament when it matters most to have that ring. And if you don't get that ring, you cannot be put in contention for winning, and that's or being the best team of all time. So that would be a massive shock to the organization. It's definitely a good thing to be mentioning. So as far as like retirement changes, I'm not really sure as far as retirement is considered. I don't think we're going to see any of them like take a break. I mean, formal. I don't know, man. Like a loss of champs, anything could happen. I'm being 100% honest with you guys. If a loss of champs happens to Optic, I'm not gonna say anything because anything could happen. I'm being completely honest. I'm being dead serious.
Yeah. Well,
and normally I would be real. I'd be like, no, there's no way that they are going to split apart if they lose at Call of Duty XP. But when you look at the interviews from the beginning of Black Ops 3, literally at the event after Advanced Warfare, all they said was that we're looking forward to the next COD champs. Of course, it's Call of Duty XP now. It's called Call of Duty XP. But if they do not win that tournament, that is probably one of the biggest losses. Besides Advanced Warfare, I think Advanced Warfare might be a little bit bigger because of the fact of them constantly winning. You can kind of compare the two because Optic's still been on top for as long as they have been. I mean, it's coming on a year and a half now. But if they don't win 2 champs in a row, when they are without a doubt the number one team in the world, undoubtedly, that is one of the biggest losses that our organization has ever had. So yeah, it's definitely something to kind of bring up. Landon, who are your top 5 players right now? Oh, that's a big one, Mr. Sickness. Oh my goodness. No matter what I answer for this, it's not going to be correct in everyone's opinions. I'll just give like a general answer. I mentioned earlier John. I think John, 195% is a top 5 player in this game. I think John is. I think Slasher is from Envious. I think Scump is a top 5 player. You can throw in the argument. It's really between like Crim 6 and Formal for me to get that like second or third spot. Personally, I would say Formal as far as like gun skill is considered. And for that 5th spot, man, that 5th spot, I'm trying to think of players right now in the Call of Duty World League, top 5 players. I mean, do you give it to Octane? I mean, granted, his performance hasn't been that great so far throughout, at least for the last month or so. But you give it to Octane, you give it to a player like Havoc from Cloud9, you give it to Colchin from TSM, players in their own regard who were without a doubt MVPs for their team. I don't know. That's a good question, though. Top 5 players. I think undoubtedly, though, you've got to put Scump, you got to put John, Slasher, Formal in your list. But who's that 5th player? There's a lot of guys in contention for that. And based on whatever team you're on, it's hard to rise to that occasion. It's hard to be in consideration for that. And right now, it's everyone's opinion. Right? I mean, everyone can have a different opinion. If John's not in your top 5, if Scump's not in your top 5, which I'm not say like Scump is the only person who has to be in everyone's top 5 list for it to be valid. But whoever your opinion is obviously your opinion. Those are just the guys that I have currently on my list. I mean, I could put Attach in there. He's looked a bit as slow as late. But as far as top 5 players right now, at this current time in being, I think Octane can maybe be swapped out for someone else. Who would that be? Good question. I need to maybe kind of look that up. It's a good question, though. Thank you very much, Mr. Sickness, for that one. I'm trying to move forward through these, so I apologize if I don't read every single question. I would love to, but we're kind of closing in, I believe, on an hour and a half, which I did not predict at all. I was trying to go at least for like 45 minutes to an hour. People are saying apathy in the chat. That's definitely a good person to be bringing up. Last couple questions from Royce McGriddles. What is up, dude? He says, Landon question, in all caps. The NBA and MLB are worried about balancing the competitive playing field with skill. With OG this run that they have been on, could you see the idea of disbanding a team for competitive purposes? That's a good question. Is it an idea that could happen? No. But as far as from a perspective of someone looking at it and saying, is this good for the scene? In some ways, it's good for the scene because it keeps things competitive. And honestly, I think what the best thing for the competitive scene would be is to add storylines. The reason why Black Ops 2, the reason why Ghost was such a fun game to watch is because you had one side, the heroes. You had Optic, who could just never rise to the occasion. They could get that win once, which was at X Games. They win the first medal ever for competitive Call of Duty. Then you have the villains. You have EG, Complexity, constantly calling them out at tournaments and that they won't rise to the occasion. Why are you guys playing Minecraft, which was a fantastic series, by the way? But you had the villains. You had the guys. You had storylines, right? You had storylines in that game. So to say, would it improve the competitive scene? I think without a doubt it would. Is it likely that it would ever happen? Absolutely not. If ESL disbanded the Optic team for competitive purposes, the scene would die. The scene would literally cave in on itself and say, you guys are literally putting past competitive integrity and wanting to add an outside source to make it competitive. You are controlling what happens as far as competitive would go. I think the scene would absolutely disband. I think it's an interesting idea. I think it realistically is, and I don't blame the NBA, the MLB. I remember when Chris Paul tried to leave and go to another team. The staff at NBA wouldn't allow it to happen due to competitive purposes like that. And right now, taking consideration the Golden State Warriors, man, they have what? 3 top 5, top 10 players, top 4 or 4 top 10 players in the game right now. Like what? Like how does that happen? Like I don't even know, man. But yeah, it's a really good question. Honestly, it really is. I really appreciate the question there, Royce McGriddles. But realistically, is this something that's ever going to happen? If it is, that'll be one of the like one of the last days that we ever see competitive Call of Duty probably be a thing. Do you think TSM missed on a Merc and TP opportunity when they were free agents? I mean, in some cases, there was a lot of free agents who were out there that I think were good. Merc is a fantastic player at this game. TP as well. TP this is one of his better titles. Yeah, you mean the 4 of the top 5. Thank you, Crawdad. I apologize. Yeah. Get back to the question, though. Do I think they missed an opportunity? Yes, in some ways, but no in some ways. Of course, if you're TSM, you've got to keep at least 2 players on that team. You have probably Wheats and Pac-Man, Cole Chan as well. I mean, the only player to maybe get rid of is maybe Ivy, maybe Pac-Man, maybe Wheats, because I think Cole Chan's really the only solid player to keep on that roster at the time. I'm not sure the roster really would have worked, because we saw TP trying to work with a bunch of young guns and Luminosity. Didn't really work out the best. Granted, he was playing the main AR role, which has never been TP's role. It never should be TP's role, which unfortunately forced him to retire as well as Merc. So they missed on an opportunity. In some ways, I mean, whenever you're missing on talent, you're missing out. But do I think it really would have improved their team? Probably not, to be honest with you. I think they're great players. I think they would have improved. But I think for the most part, I don't think we would have seen a dramatic change to where the TSM roster completely gets rebooted from that. So yeah, I think we'll kind of move on from that one. Appreciate the question there very, very much. I saw someone mention, do you think there's a chance that CLG comes back into the scene? I mean, it's possible. It's possible that we see that happen. Maybe once, or not really once, but I think it's possible we maybe have it happen potentially for champs. It's a possibility. I'm finally seeing the first wave of mutes. Now I'm seeing it happen again. If you guys are having muting problems, I do apologize. Potentially, if you guys want to try to reboot the stream, that might improve it. I see some people saying that I'm mute, that I'm not. I can see it on OBS when I'm live and when I'm not. The first time when it happened, I could see that I was muted, but I do apologize if there's any problems with that. If you guys want to retweet the stream, just try and do that. People are tweeting SKT Killa, Liquid Killa, Privacy Killa. Which do you prefer? I would prefer SKT, man. I want to get SKT, SK Telecom in here. I want to see that happen. All right. I'm gonna read maybe like the last two questions. We'll kind of narrow it down. People are saying that I mute myself. It should be fine, guys. It should be fine. Let me know that in the chat right now as I see it. Is the muting situation okay? 'Cause I apologize. I need to fix that. That's something that we can kind of. It's the thing. 90% cap. Man, you guys are getting me good, man. I gotta admit, you guys are getting me good. If I am muted, I apologize. But hopefully, see, the guy said I restarted, but I told him to restart. So in a sense, how did he hear me? That's a good question. Either way, let's move on. Last couple questions that we're going to take and look at potentially. Most of them are saying muted, so that's kind of unfortunate. This one's coming again from Faliberte. Do you think the introduction of an amateur league that feeds into pro league with relegation and or at all would help the AM side of the scene and even help players break into the light? Absolutely. There was a video that I made, what was it, maybe a couple months ago, I think? I'm just joking, Steven. You're good, man. I'm just joking around. There was a video that I made a few weeks ago, maybe like a month or two ago, that I said that I would love to have an amateur pro league happen or a semi-pro league happen. I know we had it for a time in Advanced Warfare with I think like UMG and PA who did that for a little bit of time. I think it would be good though. I think it realistically would. I brought up the idea of having, in some ways, like a CS:GO style to where they kind of have it, so you can play certain matches and whatnot. But yeah, I think it definitely would help a lot. I think for players who aren't necessarily on the top of their game right now, players who aren't necessarily in the pro league have an opportunity to play for money, to play for a spot, to play for something. I think it would be great. It also helps with players, but also helps with organizations to where they're trying to get to the next level of the scene. I think it would be great. I think it would be. I don't see any negatives coming from that. And I think overall, I would really, really enjoy that a lot. So yes, I definitely take that in consideration. I would 100% run with that one. Thank you very much for the question, Faliberte. Early predictions for Orlando. I mean, honestly, it's kind of difficult to bring up. It's kind of a hard question to answer. Early predictions for Orlando. I got to see what happens. I want to see the practice regimen for Optic Gaming. I want to see how Envious is doing. I want to see the consistency from DT. What happens with Rise Nation? Not as far as roster changes are considered, but as far as overall, if they're improving realistically, I want to see the changes that are going to go down. Honestly, I think if we see any teams make a roster change right now, it's always kind of beating a dead horse realistically. I think any team who makes a change, who aren't already in the top 6 from NA, EU as well, I know there's some guaranteed teams, because like Infuse and Splice, those guys, Millennium as well, they can easily, not I say easily, but definitely make a run at Call of Duty XP. However, I think if we do see teams start to make a change, they're probably not going to really sway my decision on who gets a top placing of this tournament. You might see like 1 or 2 of them make a major run, but a lot of the times when you have a team that gets forced for an event, rarely do you see them have a huge impact. So I'm going to take one last question. One last question before we close out. I want to give a massive thank you to everyone who has supported the stream tonight. I know we've kind of gone down in viewership as the time has gone on. That's totally fine with me. I love staying around, hanging out with you guys as far as the stream is considered. Massive shout out to you guys. You guys are absolutely incredible, and I think the first show has been an absolute success. The last question, this one comes from Matt Wizzo. He says, what if a team that isn't Envy or Optic win MLG Orlando? What would this mean for Call of Duty XP? I think as far as like what this would mean, as far as like predictions or as far as like momentum coming into an event, I mean, honestly, it really kind of depends on who it is. Obviously, like, I mean, if we like give it to Rise Nation, or if we give it, let's just say we give it to a team who's not right. Okay, let me give this Luminosity Gaming. I'm going to use them as an example. Say that they win this tournament. To give Matt Wizzo's prediction, or not really prediction, but his thought, right? To put it into action. If Luminosity Gaming were to win MLG Orlando, there would be a huge decision that the competitive scene would have to make into should we make this double eliminate? No, I'm kidding. I wish that was a question that we could ask or kind of bring up, because if a team other than Optic, a team other than Envy, I'll even throw Rise Nation in there, wins Call of Duty XP, this completely changes up a number of different things. This throws out my entire prediction for what would be Call of Duty XP, which would be an Optic Gaming final, an MVS final, a Rise Nation final. That throws it out the window. That would make the scene completely and utterly... It would throw out it's in some ways like Advanced Warfare went, because we had two teams in the finals, in which case no one thought would happen. We had what? We had Denial. Yeah, they were a fine team. Yeah, they were a solid team, but they were by no means a championship caliber team who could win on a consistent basis. That's the reason why the only championship that roster won, as far as a major was considered, is the biggest tournament of all time, or not of all time, but of that title. And you had them versing a TR squad who was incredibly unnoticed, a squad who really. No one predicted to make the final, right? They were a younger squad that no one had any prediction to see make it far in the tournament. Granted, they were a good team. They made it to, I believe, prior to that tournament, they had a good placing. But if you were to say that you had a TR and Denial final, people would slap you. They really would. It's actually funny enough that in the background of the HUD right now, you guys can see the top. It's actually the screen after the win that Denial had. But if we see a change-up happen at the end of the game, it'll definitely change a lot of stuff heading into what would be Infinite Warfare. Depending on what happens with Optic, if that was to happen, depending on what happens with Rise Nation, I think we would see a lot of roster changes happen. I think we would see a lot of major teams make some decisions based on the team that wins, whoever it would be. Their stock as a player would probably go up. I think based on whatever organization would win that tournament, say it's like a DT, right? Let's just throw all predictions out the window. If DT, a temporary team, because I'm not sure how long the DT purchase goes for. I'm not sure if TSM, if CLG, whoever buys the TSM roster or the DT roster, right? If they win, I'm not sure if that's a permanent purchase or if that is a Call of Duty XP purchase. So imagine if DT wins Call of Duty XP, then they are the number one team in the world at that point, and they don't have a solid organization who owns them. I guarantee you that we would have a massive change of organizations as far as like teams wanting to own that particular roster. I think it would definitely turn the scene into turmoil, because that would change up our entire thoughts of what has been this Call of Duty title, which has been really permanently dominated by two teams. And you can maybe throw Envious in there as well, being Optic, being Rise, and in some ways you can kind of throw Envy in there as well. So I think that we would see Roster Mania come back. We would see a pre-title Roster Mania. That would be the icing on the cake. It would be the sprinkles on the top, because it would not make any sense whatsoever if we do not see one of those major teams win the title. And honestly, it would be a lot of people taking Black Ops 3 and saying, oh, this is a joke because Optic was the major team in Black Ops 3. They were a predominantly good team. Well, Advanced Warfare, that's what happened. Optic, number one team in the world. They come out, place top 7. I think they beat TK to place top 8 or something like that. It would be interesting. I would hope that we have a good final. But, we'll see. We're making some early predictions, of course. But, guys, that's going to do it for the HUD episode number 1. I really want to say massive appreciation, massive thank you to everyone who has tuned in to this episode. It's been a fun time. It's been a great time. Honestly, it's been a fantastic time hanging out with you guys tonight. Really do appreciate all the support and all the follows. If you guys haven't already, make sure to go ahead and check up at the very top of the screen right now. Check out social media if you guys want to follow me on Twitter at LandoCod. Feel free to do so. YouTube, Air Landon. You just type in LandoCod on YouTube in the search bar. You'll find me there. Instagram as well. Don't really use that too often, but I'm trying to get into it. And of course, if you guys want to support the HUD in general, all you have to do is go to the HUD TV, follow them on Twitter, get a lot of different information as far as the show is considered. And of course, if you guys want to hit the follow button, when I'm personally streaming, playing some Call of Duty, playing some Overwatch, playing some other stuff as well, if you guys want to get updated on that, feel free to do that. Also, but yeah, guys, that's going to do it for the show today. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. It was awesome. Thank you guys a lot. I'll talk to you guys soon. That has been the HUD, episode 1.